Deep learning is a set of algorithms in machine learning that attempt to model high-level abstractions in data by using model architectures composed of multiple nonlinear transformations. Deep learning is part of a broader family of machine learning methods based on learning representations of data. An observation can be represented in many ways, but some representations make it easier to learn tasks of interest from examples, and research in this area attempts to define what makes better representations and how to create models to learn these representations. Various deep learning architectures such as deep neural networks, convolutional deep neural networks, and deep belief networks have been applied to fields like computer vision, automatic speech recognition, natural language processing, and music audio signal recognition, where they have been shown to produce state-of-the-art results on various tasks. Introduction. Deep learning architectures, specifically those built from artificial neural networks, date back at least to the neocognitron introduced by Kunihiko Fukushima in 1980. The ANNs themselves date back even further. In 1989, Yann LeCun et al. Were able to apply the standard backpropagation algorithm, which had been around since 1974, to a deep neural network with the purpose of recognizing handwritten zip codes on mail. Despite the success of applying the algorithm, the time to train the network on this dataset was approximately 3 days, making it impractical for general use. Many factors contribute to the slow speed, one being due to the so-called vanishing gradient problem analyzed in 1991 by Jawan Kortara G. N. Shmaduba student Sepp Hochreiter. In combination with speed issues, ANNs fell out of favor in practical machine learning, and simpler models such as support vector machines became the popular choice of the field in the 1990s and 2000s. The term deep learning gained traction in the mid-2000s after a publication by Geoffrey Hinton and Roland Salahuddin showed how a many-layered feed-forward neural network could be effectively pre-trained one layer at a time, treating each layer in turn as an unsupervised restricted Boltzmann machine, then using supervised backpropagation for fine-tuning. In 1992, Shmaduba had already implemented a very similar idea for the more general case of unsupervised deep hierarchies of recurrent neural networks, and also experimentally shown its benefits for speeding up supervised learning. Since the resurgence of deep learning, it has shown to be part of many state-of-the-art systems in different disciplines, particularly that of computer vision and automatic speech recognition. Results on commonly used evaluation sets such as TIMIT and MNIST are constantly being improved with new applications of deep learning. Currently, it has been shown that deep learning architectures in the form of convolutional neural networks have been best performing, however, these are more widely used in computer vision than in ASR. Advances in hardware have also been an important enabling factor for the renewed interest of deep learning. In particular, powerful graphics processing units are highly suited for the kind of number crunching, matrix vector math involved in machine learning. GPUs have been shown to speed up training algorithms by orders of magnitude, bringing running times of weeks back to days. Fundamental concepts. Deep learning algorithms are based on distributed representations, a concept used in machine learning. The underlying assumption behind distributed representations is that observed data is generated by the interactions of many different factors on different levels. Deep learning adds the assumption that these factors are organized into multiple levels, corresponding to different levels of abstraction or composition. Varying numbers of layers and layer sizes can be used to provide different amounts of abstraction. Deep learning algorithms in particular exploit this idea of hierarchical explanatory factors. Different concepts are learned from other concepts, with the more abstract, higher-level concepts being learned from the lower-level ones. These architectures are often constructed with a greedy layer-by-layer method that models this idea. Deep learning helps to disentangle these abstractions and pick out which features are useful for learning. Many deep learning algorithms are framed as unsupervised learning problems. Because of this, these algorithms can make use of the unlabeled data that other algorithms cannot. Unlabeled data is usually more abundant than labeled data, making this a very important benefit of these algorithms. The deep belief network introduced in the next section is an example of a deep structure that can be trained in an unsupervised manner. Deep learning and artificial neural networks. Some of the most successful deep learning methods involve artificial neural networks. Artificial neural networks are inspired by the 1959 biological model proposed by Nobel laureates David H. Hubel and Torsten Wiesel, who found two types of cells in the primary visual cortex: simple cells and complex cells. Many artificial neural networks can be viewed as cascading models of cell types inspired by these biological observations. Fukushima's neocognitron introduced convolutional neural networks partially trained by unsupervised learning. Yann LeCun et al. Applied supervised backpropagation to such architectures. With the advent of the backpropagation algorithm in the 1970s, many researchers tried to train supervised deep artificial neural networks from scratch, initially with little success. Sepp Hochreiter's diploma thesis of 1991 formally identified the reason for this failure in the vanishing gradient problem, which not only affects many layered feed-forward networks, but also recurrent neural networks. The latter are trained by unfolding them into very deep feed-forward networks, where a new layer is created for each time step of an input sequence processed by the network. As errors propagate from layer to layer, they shrink exponentially with the number of layers. To overcome this problem, several methods were proposed. One is JA1-quarter or GEN Schmidt-Huber's multi-level hierarchy of networks pre-trained one level at a time through unsupervised learning, fine-tuned through backpropagation. Here each level learns a compressed representation of the observations that is fed to the next level. Another method is the long short-term memory network of 1997 by Hochreiter and Schmidt-Huber. In 2009, deep multidimensional LSTM networks demonstrated the power of deep learning with many nonlinear layers, by winning 3 ICDAR 2009 competitions in connected handwriting recognition, without any prior knowledge about the 3 different languages to be learned. Sven Behunk relied only on the sign of the gradient when training his neural abstraction pyramid to solve problems like image reconstruction and face localization. Other methods also use unsupervised pre-training to structure a neural network, making it first learn generally useful feature detectors. Then the network is trained further by supervised backpropagation to classify labeled data. The deep model of Hinton et al. Involves learning the distribution of a high-level representation using successive layers of binary or real-valued latent variables. It uses a restricted Boltzmann machine to model each new layer of higher-level features. Each new layer guarantees an increase on the lower bound of the log likelihood of the data, thus improving the model, if trained properly. Once sufficiently many layers have been learned, a deep architecture may be used as a generative model by reproducing the data when sampling down the model from the top-level feature activations. Hinton reports that his models are effective feature extractors over high-dimensional, structured data. The Google Brain team led by Andrew Ng and Jeff Dean created a neural network that learned to recognize higher-level concepts, such as cats, only from watching unlabeled images taken from YouTube videos. Other methods rely on the sheer processing power of modern computers, in particular, GPUs. In 2010 it was shown by Dan Sirazan and colleagues in January 1/4 GEN Schmidt-Huber's group at the Swiss AI lab IDSIA that despite the above-mentioned vanishing gradient problem, the superior processing power of GPUs makes plain backpropagation feasible for deep feed-forward neural networks with many layers. The method outperformed all other machine learning techniques on the old, famous MNIST handwritten digits problem of Yann LeCun and colleagues at NYU. As of 2011, the state-of-the-art in deep learning feed-forward networks alternates convolutional layers and max pooling layers, topped by several pure classification layers. Training is usually done without any unsupervised pre-training. Since 2011, GPU-based implementations of this approach won many pattern recognition contests, including the IJCNN 2011 Traffic Sign Recognition Competition, the ISBI 2012 Segmentation of Neuronal Structures in MSTAX Challenge, and others. Such supervised deep learning methods also were the first artificial pattern recognizers to achieve human competitive performance on certain tasks. Deep learning architectures. It is worth explaining some common architectures used for deep learning. Basic models of deep neural networks and deep belief networks are given below. Deep neural networks. A deep neural network is defined to be an artificial neural network with at least one hidden layer of units between the input and output layers. It is also a universal approximator. Similar to shallow ANNs, it can model complex nonlinear relationships. The extra layers give it added levels of abstraction, thus increasing its modeling capability. DNNs are typically designed as feed-forward networks, but recent research has successfully applied the deep learning architecture to recurrent neural networks for applications such as language modeling. Convolutional deep neural networks are used in computer vision where their success is well documented. More recently, CNNs have been applied to acoustic modeling for automatic speech recognition, where they have shown success over previous models. For simplicity, a look at training DNNs is given here. A DNN can be discriminatively trained with the standard backpropagation algorithm. The weight updates can be done via stochastic gradient descent using the following equation. Here is the learning rate, and is the cost function. The choice of the cost function depends on factors such as the learning type and the activation function. For example, when performing supervised learning on a multiclass classification problem, common choices for the activation function and cost function are the softmax function and cross-entropy function, respectively. The softmax function is defined as where represents the class probability and represent the total input to units and respectively. Cross-entropy is defined as where represents the target probability for output unit and is the probability output for after applying the activation function. Issues with deep neural networks. As with ANNs, many issues can arise with DNNs if they are naively trained. Two common issues are overfitting and computation time. DNNs are very prone to overfitting because of the added layers of abstraction, which allow them to model rare dependencies in the training data. Regularization methods such as weight decay or sparsity can be applied during training to help combat overfitting. Another regularization method that has been more recently applied to DNNs is dropout regularization. In dropout, some number of units are randomly omitted from the hidden layers during training. This helps to break the rare dependencies that can occur in the training data. Backpropagation and gradient descent have been the preferred method for training these structures due to the ease of implementation and their tendency to converge to better local optima in comparison with other training methods. However, these methods can be very computationally expensive, especially when being used to train DNNs. There are many parameters to be considered with a DNN, such as the size, the learning rate, initial weights, etc. Sweeping through the parameters may not be feasible in many tasks due to the time cost. Various tricks such as using mini-batching have been shown to speed up computation. The sheer processing power of GPUs arguably has shown the most significant speed up, mainly due to the matrix and vector computations required being well suited for GPUs. However, it is hard to make use of large cluster machines for training DNNs, so better methods of parallelizing training will undoubtedly give a significant speed up as well. Deep belief networks. A deep belief network is a probabilistic, generative model made up of multiple layers of hidden units. It can be looked at as a composition of simple learning modules that make up each layer. A DBN can be used for generatively pre-training a DNN by using the learned weights as the initial weights. Backpropagation or other discriminative algorithms can then be applied for fine-tuning of these weights. This is particularly helpful in situations where limited training data is available, as poorly initialized weights can have significant impact on the performance of the final model. These pre-trained weights are in a region of the weight space that is closer to the optimal weights. This allows for both improved modeling capability and faster convergence of the fine-tuning phase. A DBN can be efficiently trained in an unsupervised, layer-by-layer manner where the layers are typically made of restricted Boltzmann machines. A description of training a DBN via ABMs is provided below. An ABM is an undirected, generative energy-based model with an input layer and single hidden layer. Connections only exist between the visible units of the input layer and the hidden units of the hidden layer. There are no visible or hidden connections. The training method for RBMs was initially proposed by Geoffrey Hinton for use with training product of expert models and is known as contrastive divergence. CD provides an approximation to the maximum likelihood method that would ideally be applied for learning the weights of the RBM. In training a single RBM, weight updates are performed with gradient descent via the following equation. Here is the probability of a visible vector, which is given by is the partition function and is the energy function assigned to the state of the network. A lower energy indicates the network is in a more desirable configuration. The gradient has the simple form where represent averages with respect to distribution. The issue arises in sampling as this requires running alternating Gibbs sampling for a long time. CD replaces this step by running alternating Gibbs sampling for steps. After steps, the data is sampled and that sample is used in place of. The CD procedure works as follows: initialize the visible units to a training vector. Update the hidden units in parallel given the visible units. Represents the sigmoid function and is the bias of. Update the visible units in parallel given the hidden units. Is the bias of. This is called the reconstruction step. Re-update the hidden units in parallel given the reconstructed visible units using the same equation as in step 2. Perform the weight update. Once an RBM is trained, another RBM can be stacked atop of it to create a multi-layer model. Each time another RBM is stacked, the input visible layer is initialized to a training vector and values for the units in the already trained RBM layers are assigned using the current weights and biases. The final layer of the already trained layers is used as input to the new RBM. The new RBM is then trained with the procedure above, and then this whole process can be repeated until some desired stopping criterion is met. Despite the approximation of CD to maximum likelihood being very crude, empirical results have shown it to be an effective method for use with training deep architectures. Convolutional neural networks. A CNN is composed of one or more convolutional layers with fully connected layers on top. It also uses tied weights and pooling layers. This architecture allows CNNs to take advantage of the 2D structure of input data. In comparison with other deep architectures, convolutional neural networks are starting to show superior results in both image and speech applications. They can also be trained with standard backpropagation. CNNs are easier to train than other regular, deep, feed-forward neural networks and have many fewer parameters to estimate, making them a highly attractive architecture to use. Convolutional deep belief networks. A recent achievement in deep learning is from the use of convolutional deep belief networks. A CDBN is very similar to normal convolutional neural network in terms of its structure. Therefore, like CNNs, they are also able to exploit the 2D structure of images combined with the advantage gained by pre-training and deep belief network. They provide a generic structure which can be used in many image and signal processing tasks and can be trained in a way similar to that for deep belief networks. Recently, many benchmark results on standard image data sets like CIFAR have been obtained using CDBNs. Results: automatic speech recognition. The results shown in the table below are for automatic speech recognition on the popular TIMIT data set. This is a common data set used for initial evaluations of deep learning architectures. The entire set contains 630 speakers from 8 major dialects of American English, with each speaker reading 10 different sentences. Its small size allows many different configurations to be tried effectively with it. The error rates presented are phone error rates. Image classification. A common evaluation set for image classification is the MNIST database data set. MNIST is composed of handwritten digits and includes 60,000 training examples and 10,000 test examples. Similar to TIMIT, its small size allows multiple configurations to be tested. A comprehensive list of results on this set can be found in. The current best result on MNIST is an error rate of 0.23%, achieved by Siraz and al. in 2012. Deep learning in the human brain. Computational deep learning is closely related to a class of theories of brain development proposed by cognitive neuroscientists in the early 1990s. An approachable summary of this work is Elman, A.A.L.'s 1996 book Rethinking Innateness. As these theories were also instantiated in computational models, they are technical predecessors of purely computationally motivated deep learning models. These models share the interesting property that various proposed learning dynamics in the brain conspire to support the self-organization of just the sort of interrelated neural networks utilized in the later, purely computational deep learning models, and which appear to be analogous to one way of understanding the neocortex of the brain as a hierarchy of filters where each layer captures some of the information in the operating environment, and then passes the remainder, as well as modified base signal, to other layers further up the hierarchy. The result of this process is a self-organizing stack of transducers, well tuned to their operating environment. As described in the New York Times in 1995. The infant's brain seems to organize itself under the influence of waves of so-called trophic factors. Different regions of the brain become connected sequentially, with one layer of tissue maturing before another and so on until the whole brain is mature. The importance of deep learning with respect to the evolution and development of human cognition did not escape the attention of these researchers. One aspect of human development that distinguishes us from our nearest primate neighbors may be changes in the timing of development. Among primates, the human brain remains relatively plastic until late in the postnatal period, whereas the brains of our closest relatives are more completely formed by birth. Thus, humans have greater access to the complex experiences afforded by being out in the world during the most formative period of brain development. This may enable us to tune into rapidly changing features of the environment that other animals, more constrained by evolutionary structuring of their brains, are unable to take account of. To the extent that these changes are reflected in similar timing changes in hypothesized wave of cortical development, they may also lead to changes in the extraction of information from the stimulus environment during the early self-organization of the brain. Of course, along with this flexibility comes an extended period of immaturity, during which we are dependent upon our caretakers and our community for both support and training. The theory of deep learning therefore sees the co-evolution of culture and cognition as a fundamental condition of human evolution. Publicity around deep learning is often presented as a step towards realizing strong AI, and thus many organizations have become interested in its use for particular applications. Most recently, in December 2013, Facebook announced that it hired Yann LeCun to head its new artificial intelligence lab that will have operations in California, London, and New York. The AI lab will be used for developing deep learning techniques that will help Facebook do tasks such as automatically tagging uploaded pictures with the names of the people in them. In March 2013, Jeffrey Hinton and two of his graduate students, Alex Kraszewski and Elias Itzkeva, were hired by Google. Their work will be focused on both improving existing machine learning products at Google and also help deal with the growing amount of data Google has. Google also purchased Hinton's company, Research. Criticisms. A main criticism of deep learning concerns the lack of theory surrounding many of the methods. Most of the learning in deep architectures is just some form of gradient descent. While gradient descent has been understood for a while now, the theory surrounding other algorithms, such as contrastive divergence, is less clear. Deep learning methods are often looked at as a black box, with most confirmations done empirically, rather than theoretically. Others point out that deep learning should be looked at as a step towards realizing strong AI, not as an all-encompassing solution. Despite the power of deep learning methods, they still lack much of the functionality needed for realizing this goal entirely. Research psychologist Gary Marcus has noted that, realistically, deep learning is only part of the larger challenge of building intelligent machines. Such techniques lack ways of representing causal relationships, have no obvious ways of performing logical inferences, and they are also still a long way from integrating abstract knowledge, such as information about what objects are, what they are for, and how they are typically used. The most powerful AI systems, Like Watson use techniques like deep learning is just one element in a very complicated ensemble of techniques, ranging from the statistical technique of Bayesian inference to deductive reasoning. Deep learning software libraries, Torch, Theno, Deep-Learning4j, see also, Graphical model, Applications of artificial intelligence, List of artificial intelligence projects, Center for Biological and Computational Learning at MIT, references. External links, Deep Learning information from the University of Montreal, 1, Geoffrey Hinton's webpage, 2, Hinton Deep Learning Tutorial, 3, Yann LeCun's webpage, 4, the Center for Biological and Computational Learning, 5, Stanford Tutorial on Unsupervised Feature Learning and Deep Learning, 6, Google's Disbelief Framework, 7, NIPS 2013 Conference, 8.